The smell of roasted turkey filled Mom's dining room, but the warmth stopped there. I sat at the far end of the table, the spot they always saved for me, furthest from the conversation, closest to the kitchen door. My sister Rachel held court at the other end, her engagement ring catching the light every time she gestured, which was often. "So the wedding venue is finally confirmed," Rachel announced, beaming at her fiancé Marcus. "The Peninsula. They had a cancellation and we jumped on it." "The Peninsula?" Aunt Linda gasped. "Rachel, that's incredible. How did you manage that?" "Well, when you're a senior marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, you make connections." Rachel smiled, then her eyes drifted toward me. That smile sharpened. "Some of us work hard to build real careers." I took another bite of mashed potatoes. They were good. Mom always made them with real butter and cream cheese. "Marcus just made partner at his law firm," Rachel continued, squeezing his hand. 29 and already a partner. Can you believe it? "That's our Rachel," Dad said, raising his wine glass. "Always been the ambitious one. The one who made something of herself." The implication hung in the air like the steam from the turkey. I was 28. I was not the ambitious one. I had not made something of myself. "Jake, pass the rolls," Mom said quietly, her tone apologetic. She always tried to smooth things over, never quite succeeding. I passed the basket to my cousin Derek, who sat beside me in what I'd come to think of as the budget seating section of the table. Derek was in community college. I was a warehouse worker. We were the family's participation trophies, proof that not everyone could be exceptional. "So Jake," Uncle Tom leaned forward, his voice that particular combination of curiosity and pity that I'd learned to recognize over the years. "Still at that distribution center? What is it, 3 years now?" I said. "For years." "Well, steady work is nothing to be ashamed of," he offered, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Not everyone can be the CEO type." Rachel laughed, a bright, crystalline sound. "Jake's more of a show up, punch the clock, go home kind of guy. Nothing wrong with that. The world needs workers." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Absolutely. Blue-collar jobs are the backbone of America. I mean, someone has to do them." I took a sip of water. They weren't wrong about the warehouse part. I did work at a distribution center. I went there 3 times a week, sometimes 4. Of course, I went there because I owned it, along with 14 others across the West Coast. But they didn't need to know that. "Jake's always been the practical one," Mom said, and I could hear the defeat in her voice. She'd given up defending me years ago, settling instead for this lukewarm acknowledgement of my existence. Not everyone needs to be in the spotlight. "Remember when he wanted to do that computer thing in college?" Dad chuckled, shaking his head. "We told him to get a real degree, something practical. Good thing he didn't waste money chasing that pipe dream." I remembered. I'd wanted to study computer science at Stanford. They'd refused to pay, said it was a waste, that I should go to state school and study business like Rachel. So I'd gone to community college for a year, worked nights, taught myself to code. Built my first app in a studio apartment that smelled like cigarette smoke from the neighbors. That app was now the foundation of a logistics optimization platform used by 43 of the Fortune 500 companies. The warehouse job. I'd started working there to understand supply chain pain points from the inside. Then I'd bought the company. Then I'd bought 13 more. "Rachel got the brains in the family," Aunt Linda said, smiling at my sister. "What's your salary now, honey? You must be doing so well." $180,000 base plus bonuses, Rachel said, trying to sound modest and failing. "It's comfortable." It was a good salary. I paid my VP of operations $240,000 and she was worth every penny. My own salary. Well, I paid myself $120,000 a year to keep things simple for taxes. The other $847 million from last year's revenue went back into expansion and the investment portfolio my financial team managed. "Jake, you must be making what, 40,000? Uncle Tom asked. "That's decent for warehouse work." "Something like that," I said. Rachel's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, then did a double take. Her face went pale, then flushed red. "What's wrong, honey?" Marcus asked. She stared at her screen, her mouth opening and closing. "There's a Forbes alert." "Oh, did they announce something about your company?" Mom asked, brightening. Rachel's company getting Forbes coverage was exactly the kind of thing she lived for. "No," Rachel said slowly. Her eyes lifted from the phone to me, confusion and something else. Something sharper, flickering across her face. It's not about my company. The table went quiet. Rachel turned her phone around. On the screen was a Forbes notification. Forbes 30 under 30. Tech entrepreneur Jake Morrison revolutionizes global supply chain with $4.2 billion valuation. The silence stretched. I took another bite of turkey. That's not. Mom started then stopped. There must be another Jake Morrison. The picture, Rachel whispered. It's him. She tapped the notification. The article loaded. And there I was, professional headshot taken 2 months ago at the Forbes photoshoot, standing in front of one of my distribution centers. The headline read, "From warehouse floor to billionaire, how Jake Morrison built ChainSync without anyone knowing." Derek leaned over to look at the phone. Holy shit. Language, Aunt Linda said automatically, but her heart wasn't in it. He was staring at me. Everyone was staring at me. Jake. Dad's voice cracked slightly. What is this? I set down my fork carefully. It's a Forbes article. About you. Mom's voice climbed an octave. About you having a company? Worth $4 billion. $4.2 billion, I corrected gently. As of the Series C funding round last month. Though the valuation's probably higher now. The article's about 2 weeks old. They just published today. Rachel's hands were shaking. She scrolled through the article, her face cycling through expressions I'd never seen on her before. You founded ChainSync? 6 years ago. Well, 5.5 technically. ChainSync handles our company's entire supply chain, Marcus said, his lawyer brain apparently still functioning. We pay them. We pay you hundreds of thousands a year in fees. $1.3 million annually, I said. You got a good rate because you signed on early. Prices have gone up since then. Uncle Tom made a choking sound. You're a billionaire? On paper. Most of it's tied up in the company and investments. But yes, my net worth is somewhere around $2.8 billion, depending on stock prices and market fluctuations. The silence that followed was profound. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the distant sound of neighbors' music, the tick of the grandmother clock in the hallway. Rachel found her voice first. But you work at a warehouse. I own 15 warehouses, I said. I work at them sometimes because I like to stay connected to ground-level operations. That's actually what the Forbes article is about. How I built the company from the inside out, understanding every aspect of the supply chain before I tried to optimize it. $4.2 billion, Dad repeated, looking dazed. That's not possible. You're 28. 28 is the average age for tech founders to hit unicorn status, I said. I'm actually a bit behind schedule compared to some of my peers. Mom's hand went to her chest. Jake, why didn't you tell us? I looked at her for a long moment. When would I have told you, Mom? Between Dad telling me I was wasting my life on computers, or Rachel explaining how I'm not SEO material. That's not fair, Rachel said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I kept my tone level, conversational. Last Christmas you introduced me to your work friends as my brother, the warehouse guy, in that tone people use when they're explaining something embarrassing. At Easter, Dad told his golf buddies I'd never had much ambition. At your engagement party, you literally seated me at the kids' table because you said I wouldn't fit in with the professionals. Marcus was scrolling on his own phone now. There are 30 articles here. Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, Bloomberg. Jake, you were on CNBC last month. The Squawk Box interview, I nodded. That was a good conversation. Jim Cramer wanted to talk about expansion into Asian markets. Jim Cramer, Aunt Linda repeated faintly. You talked to Jim Cramer. Several times. He's actually pretty funny off camera. Rachel's phone buzzed again. Then continuously. She looked down at it and I watched the blood drain from her face completely. What now? Marcus asked. Everyone's sharing the article, she whispered. Everyone from work. My boss just texted asking if I'm related to the Jake Morrison from Forbes. She looked up at me, something like panic in her eyes. My boss. My VP. The CEO of my company just sent a company-wide email congratulating me on having a tech visionary in the family. That's nice of them, I said. Nice. Her voice pitched up. Jake, I spent 2 hours in our last meeting explaining how we needed to optimize our supply chain costs. I suggested we evaluate ChainSync alternatives because the fees were too high. My boss loved the idea. Now he knows ChainSync is owned by my brother, the one I've been calling the warehouse worker for 4 years. The weight of that settled over the table like snow. Oh my God, Mom said suddenly. The company Christmas party. I told Margaret Chin that you couldn't make it because you were working a night shift. Margaret Chin, whose husband sits on the board of Chin Investments. Chin Investments handles about $200 million of my portfolio, I confirmed. Mr. Chin and I have lunch quarterly. He's never mentioned meeting you though. Professional courtesy, I suppose. Dad's face had gone from pale to red. The warehouse. You said you worked at the Pacific Distribution Center. I do work there. I own it. I own Pacific Distribution Centers 1 through 15. Number 16 opens in Seattle next month. I told the guys at the club you were doing warehouse inventory, he said, his voice rising. I said my son counts boxes for a living. Steve Patterson was there. Steve Patterson, whose company uses your service. Patterson Logistics is one of our major clients, I agreed. Mr. Patterson and I are actually pretty friendly. We played golf at Pebble Beach last year during the supply chain summit. Uncle Tom stood up abruptly, his chair scraping back. I need some air. No one stopped him. No one moved at all. Rachel was still scrolling, her face a mask of horror. There's a video. From the Forbes shoot. She clicked it. My voice filled the dining room through her phone's speakers. People ask why I didn't tell my family about ChainSync. Video me said, leaning against a forklift in one of my warehouses. The truth is I tried it first. But every time I mentioned the company I got the same response. That's nice, honey. Or, when are you going to get a real job? Eventually I stopped trying to explain. I figured the work would speak for itself eventually. The interviewer's voice. And now you're one of Forbes 30 under 30, with a company valuation that puts you among the youngest billionaires in tech. What do you want to say to your family now? Video me smiled, that professional smile I'd perfected for press interviews. I'd say I finally got a real job. This one just came with a few more responsibilities than they expected. Rachel stopped the video. She set her phone down carefully like it might explode. You told Forbes about us, she said quietly. About how we treated you. They asked about my inspiration, I said. I told them the truth. Every time someone told me I'd never amount to anything, every time I was introduced as the family disappointment, it reminded me why I was building something. Why I was working 20-hour days in that studio apartment. Why I turned down acquisition offers that would have made me a multimillionaire at 25 because I knew the company could be worth more. 25. Mom's voice cracked. You've been a multimillionaire since you were 25? I've been a millionaire since I was 23 when the series of funding came through. But yes, by 25 I had acquisition offers in the $50 to $100 million range. I turned them down because I believed ChainSync could be worth $1 billion within 5 years. You were right, Marcus said, his lawyer brain apparently cataloging all this information. I was conservative. We hit unicorn status, $1 billion valuation, in 3.5 years. The $4.2 billion valuation came 6 months ago. Current projections have us at $8 billion within 18 months, assuming our AI optimization rollout performs as expected. Derek, still sitting next to me, let out a low whistle. Dude. That's insane. It's a lot of work, I said. But yes, it's been successful. Dad's phone started ringing. He looked at it, then stood up abruptly and walked out of the room. Through the doorway I could hear his muffled voice. Steve, I can explain. No, I had no idea. Is that Jake Morrison? Yes, I know what I said at the club. Mom was crying silently, tears running down her face. Jake, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I said gently. I told you I was working on something. You told me to be realistic. I told you I had meetings in the city. You asked if they were job interviews for better positions. I told you I was traveling for work. You said warehouse work doesn't require travel and I must be lying. We thought, she started then stopped because there was no good way to finish that sentence. Aunt Linda had her phone out now too. It's everywhere. CNN just posted about it. Tech prodigy hid billion-dollar success from family for years. The Forbes team was very thorough, I said. They interviewed about 50 people, investors, clients, employees, industry analysts. They wanted to understand how I built the company so quietly. Turns out it made for a compelling narrative. Rachel's phone rang. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. "It's my boss." "You should answer it," I said. "It's rude to leave your boss hanging." She stood up on shaky legs and walked toward the kitchen. Her voice drifted back. "Hello, Mr. Patterson." "Yes, that's my brother." "It's the same one." "I didn't know." "No, he never mentioned." Marcus was reading something on his phone. "There's a whole section here about your warehouses. It says you started working at Pacific Distribution Center as a minimum wage employee to learn the business from the ground up. You worked there for 18 months before making an acquisition offer." 20 months, I corrected. I wanted to understand every role. Loading, unloading, inventory management, customer service. The owner was planning to retire and I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. He stayed on as a consultant for 2 years, taught me everything about the business side. "How did you afford to buy a warehouse at 24? "My first app, the one I built in community college, sold to a mid-size logistics company for $8 million. I kept $2 million for living expenses and invested $6 million into building ChainSync's initial platform. The warehouse purchase came later, after series of funding." $8 million, Mom repeated numbly. "When you were 19? 20. It was right after my birthday. And you never told us." "It wasn't a question. I tried to tell you. You told me I was being scammed, that no one pays millions for apps, that I needed to focus on getting a steady job with benefits." The silence that followed was broken by Dad returning to the dining room. His face was ashen. "Steve Patterson just informed me that you're not only his logistics provider, but you saved his company from bankruptcy 3 years ago by restructuring their entire supply chain." "It was a good turnaround project," I said. "Patterson Logistics is much more efficient now." "He wants to meet you. Properly. He invited us to his house for dinner next week." Dad sat down heavily. "Jake, I've been telling everyone at the club that my daughter is the successful one. That Rachel is the one who made it big while you were working in a warehouse," I finished. Which was true. Just not the whole truth. Rachel returned from the kitchen. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. "My boss wants me to arrange a meeting with you. He wants to discuss expanding our contract with ChainSync and possibly investing in your Series D funding round." "We're not doing a Series D," I said. "We're cash flow positive and don't need external funding anymore. But I'm always happy to discuss contract expansions. Have him email my assistant. The contact information is in the Forbes article." "Your assistant," she repeated. "You have an assistant." "I have 3. One for scheduling, one for communications, and one who handles the technical aspects of my travel and equipment needs. Plus about 400 other employees across all the facilities and the headquarters." Marcus was still reading. "It says here you live in a $3.2 million loft in the city." $2.8 million. Forbes inflated the number slightly. "Though property values have gone up, so they might be right now." "We thought you lived in an apartment in the warehouse district," Mom said faintly. "I do live in the warehouse district. That's where my loft is. I bought and renovated an old industrial building. It's convenient. I can walk to the main distribution center in 15 minutes. "Why?" Rachel's voice broke on the word. "Why did you let us think you were poor? That you were barely making it?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't let you think anything. You decided what you wanted to believe and I stopped correcting you. Every time I tried to share what I was building, I got condescension or dismissal. So I stopped sharing. But billions of dollars. It's not about the money," I said. "It was never about the money. It was about building something that mattered. Something that actually solved problems. Do you know how much waste there is in global supply chains? How many inefficiencies? I built something that fixes that. The money is just a side effect of doing it well." Uncle Tom returned from outside looking shell-shocked. "My neighbor just called. He saw the Forbes article. Wanted to know if I was related to Jake Morrison." He looked at me. I told him no. I told him I didn't know any billionaires. "You can tell him yes next time," I said. "I don't mind." Aunt Linda had tears in her eyes. "Jake, the things we said. The way we treated you. You treated me like you saw me," I said simply. "I understand. Success is hard to imagine when you can't see the work behind it. You saw a warehouse worker. You didn't see the platform I was building, the code I was writing, the meetings I was taking, the company I was growing. Dad's phone rang again. He looked at it and groaned. It's Bob from the club. You might want to answer it, I said. Bob Carter runs Carter Industries, and they're considering switching to ChainSync from their current provider. He might want an introduction. Dad stared at me. You knew Bob Carter was. Dad, I know everyone at your club. Half of them are clients. The other half are potential clients. Why do you think I never accepted your invitations to join you there? It would have been awkward explaining why the CEOs kept pulling me aside for business discussions. He answered the phone with shaking hands. Hello, Bob. Yes, that's my son. I'll see what I can do. Rachel sat back down at the table. Her engagement ring no longer seemed to catch the light quite the same way. The article says you're speaking at the Global Supply Chain Summit in Singapore next month. Keynote address. It's a good opportunity to announce some new features we're rolling out. I was going to go to that summit, she said quietly, as part of my company's delegation. I know. Your company signed up 3 months ago. They're one of the sponsors. You knew I'd be there? I knew your company would be represented. I assumed you might be part of the team. Were you going to tell me then? When you saw me there? I considered the question. Probably not. I would have given my keynote, taken some meetings and flown home. Whether you made the connection or not would have been up to you. That's cold, Marcus said, but there was no heat in it. Just observation. Is it? I asked. 4 years I've been the family embarrassment. The one who didn't make it. The one who wasn't worth including in the important conversations. I built a company anyway. I succeeded anyway. I didn't do it for your approval, I did it because I loved the work. The Forbes article coming out today wasn't my choice. They decide publication dates. But I'm not going to apologize for what I built. Mom was crying harder now. Jake, we love you. You know that. I know you love the idea of me, I said gently. I'm not sure you've ever loved the actual me. The me who wanted to study computers instead of business. The me who saw potential in supply chain logistics. The me who was happy working in a warehouse because I was learning something valuable. That's not fair, Rachel said again, but even she didn't sound convinced. Maybe not, I agreed. But it's true. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. I need to take this. It's my lead investor. You have an investor calling you on Thanksgiving? Dad asked. Investors don't really observe holidays when there's money involved. I stood up. Excuse me. I walked outside to the back patio, answering as I went. Harrison, happy Thanksgiving. Yes, I saw the Forbes piece went live. No, I'm not concerned about the family angle. It's honest. The response has been strong. Good. Set up the meetings for Monday. I'll be back in the city by then. Through the window I could see my family sitting around the table, all of them on their phones now, probably reading every article about me they could find. Learning about my life from journalists and industry analysts instead of from me. Yes, the Singapore keynote is still on schedule, I continued. I've already finished the presentation. Potential acquisitions? I'll review the prospectus, but we're not in a hurry. Telchin, I'll meet him for lunch on Tuesday. Yes, same place. When I hung up and returned inside, the atmosphere had shifted again. They'd moved past shock into something else. Calculation maybe. Or recalibration. Jake, Dad said, his voice careful now, measured. We should talk. Really talk. About everything. We are talking, I said, sitting back down. We're having Thanksgiving dinner. You know what I mean. About your company. About your success. About. He gestured vaguely. Everything we didn't understand. What's there to understand? I built a company. It became successful. That's the whole story. Rachel leaned forward. The Forbes article mentions you're looking at expansion into European markets. Is that true? Yes. We're opening 3 facilities in Germany next year, with plans for 5 more across the UK and France. My company has European operations, she said, and I could hear the wheels turning in her head. We've been struggling with supply chain coordination across borders. Most companies do. That's why we're expanding there. Could I set up a meeting? Between you and our European division heads. I looked at her carefully. You want to arrange a business meeting with me? Yes. This could be huge for my company. For my career. Ah. I nodded slowly. Now I'm worth knowing. Now I'm worth introducing to your colleagues. When there's something in it for you. She flinched. That's not. Isn't it? Kept my voice level. For hours ago you mocked me for working in a warehouse. Now you want to use my success to advance your career. That's exactly what it is, Rachel. And that's fine. That's business. But let's call it what it is. Jake, that's not fair, Mom protested. Mom, I love you. I love all of you. But fairness isn't really the issue here. I stood up again. I'm going to head out. You're leaving. Dad stood too. But we haven't had dessert. And we need to talk more about this. There's not much to talk about. You all have my number. You've had it the whole time. If you want to reach out, actually reach out. But I'm not going to sit here while you all calculate how to benefit from my success. That's not what we're doing, Aunt Linda said, but her voice was weak. Aunt Linda, you've been texting someone for the past 10 minutes. I'm guessing it's someone who wants an introduction to me. Uncle Tom left earlier to call his neighbor back. Marcus has been researching how to invest in ChainSync. Dad's gotten 3 phone calls from his club. And Rachel has already asked for a business meeting. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. I understand. I really do. But I'm not interested in transactional relationships with my family. Jake, please. Mom stood reaching for my hand. Don't go. Not like this. I squeezed her hand gently. I'm not angry, Mom. I'm really not. But I need you all to understand something. The Forbes article changes nothing about who I am. I'm the same person I was this morning. I built the same company. I did the same work. The only thing that changed is that now you know about it. We want to be part of your life, she said, tears streaming down her face. Then be part of my life. Not part of my success. Not part of my business. Part of my actual life. The one where I still work in warehouses sometimes because I like understanding how the products move. The one where I drive a 6-year-old Toyota because it's reliable and I don't care about status symbols. The one where I'm still the same person you thought wasn't worth including in the important conversations. I walked toward the door. Rachel called after me. Jake, wait. I'm sorry. I'm really genuinely sorry for how I treated you. I turned back. She was standing now, and for the first time all day she looked genuinely distressed rather than calculating. I believe you, I said. And I accept your apology. But Rachel, I need you to understand something. Success didn't change me. Money didn't change me. I'm the same person I was when I was living in that studio apartment eating ramen and writing code at 3 a.m. The same person I was when I worked minimum wage at the warehouse. The same person I've always been. You just couldn't see it because you were looking at what I had instead of who I was. I see it now, she whispered. Do you? Or do you see $4.2 billion? She didn't answer. I walked out the front door and got into my car. That 6-year-old Toyota still running perfectly well. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Messages from employees, investors, other family members who'd seen the Forbes piece. A text from my VP of operations. The article looks great. Ready for the Monday morning press marathon. I texted back. Ready. See you at 6. Because that was the thing they'd never understood. The money was nice. The success was gratifying. But what I actually loved was the work. The problem solving. The optimization. The elegant code that made complex systems run smoothly. The satisfaction of seeing a warehouse operate at peak efficiency because I'd designed the flow correctly. Forbes had captured that, actually. The article was about more than my net worth. It was about the philosophy of building something from the inside out. About understanding the problem before you try to solve it. About the value of doing the unglamorous work that nobody sees. My family had read the headline and seen the valuation. They'd missed the actual story. Maybe someday they'd go back and read it for real. Read the part about the 20-hour days. The failed prototypes. The clients who took a chance on an unknown startup. The employees who believed in the vision. The slow, grinding work of building something that mattered. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd stay focused on the number, $4.2 billion, and miss everything else. Either way, I had work to do. Singapore wasn't going to prepare itself for, and the German expansion needed my attention. The Series C investors wanted quarterly reports. 3 major clients were waiting for contract renewals. The AI optimization rollout required my final approval. I pulled out of my parents' driveway and headed back to the city. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Morrison? This is Patricia Chen from Forbes. I'm following up on the article response. Do you have time for a few quick questions? Sure, I said, merging onto the highway. The article has received extraordinary engagement. Over 2 million views in the first 4 hours. Your story about hiding your success from your family really resonated with readers. Can you tell me, do you have any regrets about keeping it secret for so long? I thought about it. About the Thanksgivings where I sat at the far end of the table. About the family gatherings where I was introduced as the warehouse worker. About the subtle and not so subtle dismissals that had accumulated over the years. No regrets, I said. It taught me something important. That external validation doesn't matter. What matters is doing work you believe in, building something that has value, and staying true to your vision even when no one else can see it. My family couldn't see what I was building. But I could. And that was enough. That's a great quote. Can I use it? Sure. One more question. Now that your family knows, what happens next? I watched the city lights appear on the horizon, the skyline I'd come to know so well over the past 6 years. Somewhere in that cluster of buildings was my loft, my office, my warehouses, my life's work. Now, I said, I get back to work. The same work I've been doing all along. Nothing changes. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Enjoy your holiday. I hung up and smiled. Guess it was true. Nothing had changed. I was still the same person. Still building the same company. Still solving the same problems. The only difference was that now, when my sister introduced me to her colleagues, she'd have to think of a new way to describe me. I was fine with that. In fact, I was better than fine. I was exactly where I wanted to be.